Hey guys, in this module, we're going to be talking about something super simple. What's a stock? Now, a stock is basically just a security that signifies ownership in a corporation. So basically, by having stocks in a company, you have claim on that company's assets and earnings. So basically, their buildings, their equipment, and all the money they make, part of it is yours because you're partial owner of that company. So by having stocks in a company or shares, these are synonym words, stocks and shares, it's the same thing. So if you have shares in a company, you're basically partial owner of that company and you have a claim on their assets and their earnings. Now, why would a corporation issue shares or stock? And why would somebody want to buy stocks in a corporation? Well, very simple. So imagine this. Imagine you're an entrepreneur, you like electronics, and let's say you sell drones. Okay, you're making and selling drones, and you're selling drones to your family, your relatives, and in your community, and you're making good money doing that. Now, you think drones are going to be a big thing in the future, so you want to go global or even nationwide, right? So you want to sell way more across the globe. So what do? You need to open more stores, right? How would you do that? You need capital. Now, let me get on my whiteboard here. So imagine this. Imagine right now, this year, you're able to make $100,000 by selling drones in your community, right? Now, you're 100% owner of your company. This is your company, and let's say we're going to call it DRN for drone. So you're 100% owner of this company, which makes $100,000. Now, you want to go nationwide, open stores everywhere, okay? Let's say you want to open 5 stores, and each store that you're going to open is going to cost you about $1 million, okay? So it's super expensive having drone stores. Again, this is just an example. Numbers don't need to make sense. So where are you going to get $5 million? You can't collect $5 million by making $100,000 a year. Is going to take you way too long. So you need investors to give you that money, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to sell shares, sell stock in your company for them to give you the cash that you require. So if you require $5 million in total to open these stores, you're going to tell investors, look, I'll give you part of my company. I'll give you shares in my company. And let's say you give them 50%, okay? So maybe you're going to give them 50% of your company. So they give you $5 million for you to open all those stores. And by you having all those stores, you're going to be able to make way more money. Okay, so let's say with 5 stores, you can make $2 million every single year. Okay, so even though you only own 50% of your company right now, that 50% is worth way much more because you make way more money now. So that 50% you're still gonna make $1 million every year in comparison to only $100,000 every year. So even though you have less shares in your company, you're able to make way more money because your company is way bigger, right? So this pie here is way bigger than this pie, okay? So it's actually a very good idea to sell shares in your company when you want to grow your company and you need the capital. If you don't want to grow organically, because that might take too long, right? So why would a corporation issue stock? Because they want to grow. They need the capital to expand, and they're willing to sell part of their company to you to get that capital. Now, why would an investor want to buy shares in a company? Again, very easily, to participate in the growth of that company, because that person who's investing will own part of the company. So they'll participate in the growth of the company and make money through their earnings and their growth, but without even putting in work, just by owning the shares, right? So somebody else is going to be doing the work and they're going to be collecting money. Now, for traders, what we want to do is we want to look for mispricing in the price of a stock, because again, when we buy or sell a stock, it has a price. If we can evaluate at what point that price is too high or too low, and we find the mispricing, we can take advantage of it and profit off that mispricing. So this is really why you would want to companies issue shares and why investors or traders would want to buy shares in a company. Now, let me just open this real quick here. Now, how can you buy a stock? What do you do to buy a stock? Now, there's two ways to buy a stock, and it depends if a stock is private or if the company that you're buying is public. Now, how and where can you buy stock? Well, it depends. If you want to buy stocks in a private company or if you want to buy stocks in a public company. Now, what's a private and what's a public company? A private company is basically a company that has a relatively small amount of owners and that doesn't trade on a public exchange. A public company is a big company that trades on one of the public exchanges. So when we're talking about Apple, Amazon, Netflix, all these big companies, Facebook, they're public companies. Now, before they were public companies, they were private companies. They were smaller companies at one point that didn't trade on an exchange. Okay, so in the same example that we were talking about, where if you wanted to open a drone company, initially it would be a private company, right? You would have a few investors, and that's it. It wouldn't be public. Then there's a process for a private company to go public, which we'll cover in a later module. But this is what you need to know about that for now. So you can't just walk down the street and see a restaurant that somebody opens and invest in it, right? Because any restaurant, that's a private company. If somebody has a store, it's their private company. You can't just walk in and say, hey, I'm buying shares in that company. To be able to buy shares in a private company, you got to know the owner. You got to be either a friend or relative of the owner or somebody who works there. Or you got to be a qualified investor. So you got to have a lot of cash. You got to be rich. And that's the only way that you're allowed to invest in a private company. So it's not easy to invest in private companies. And because of that, it's not easy for private companies to get funds when they need, right? Because they got to know somebody who's going to be able to give them the funds, or they got to know some people who have a lot of money. Now, public companies, on the other hand, anybody can invest in them. It doesn't matter how much money you have. You don't need to know the owner. You don't need to know anybody at the company. You can just call your broker, call the bank, tell them, hey, I want to buy shares in Facebook, and that's it. You got your shares. So there's a very big difference in private companies and public companies. When we're talking about buying and selling stocks, we're only talking about public companies because these are the only shares and stock that we can buy. And that's the only stocks that trade on exchanges. Private companies don't trade on exchanges. And again, if you want to invest in a private company, you got to either know the owners, somebody who works there, or you got to be a qualified investor. With a qualified investor means that you make, and it depends, each state and each country is different. But let's say, for example, in Canada, you got to be making more than I think either between $200,000 or $400,000 every year. For the past 3 years, and you got to have more than $2 million worth of assets under your name. So you got to be rich enough that you're financially savvy to be able to understand how private companies work. Again, so private companies, very hard to buy shares in, but public company, extremely easy. And that's what we're going to be looking at in this course.